Good morning. So we're going to continue where we left off yesterday, which it was in lesson 4 in chapter 1. Lesson 4 is proportional and non-proportional relationships. And yesterday we talked about a few vocabulary words at the beginning of the lesson in that video. We talked about what proportional meant, and we talked about what non-proportional meant. Proportional is when you are looking at a constant rate, and we saw a few examples yesterday within tables of what a unit rate, constant rate pattern looks like to make it proportional. Then obviously the opposite of that would be non-proportional, and that is where we aren't seeing that pattern. We don't see the same unit rate going through a table. So we tried a couple of examples together, and we left off with some of the examples on page 33 and 34. Today we're going to start on page 36, and I'm going to do 2 more examples with you. And so you should be on page 36 with your calculator still and a pencil. And we're going to walk through again and take a look at 2 different stories and determine whether the tables and the stories presented to us are considered a proportional relationship or not. After I do a couple, you're going to also then try a few as well to see how you're doing with the concept, and then you'll also be able to check your answers with that. So we're going to start in the guided practice on number 1 on page 36. So it says, number 1, the Vista Marina rents boats for $25 per hour. So I'm actually going to take and underline so I can get my pen there. There we go. There's the unit rate in our story, $25 per hour. Now, in addition to that rental fee, there's also going to be a $12 charge for fuel. So we're going to use this table to determine if the number of hours you rent the boat is proportional to the total cost and be able to explain it. So let's talk about rental time. Let's say we rent the boat, let's say 1 hour, 2, and up to 3. So if we rent the boat for 1 hour, how much is that going to cost us? Well, if we come back to the story, remember it said $25 per hour, but we also have to remember that there's a rental fee for the boat, and it's $12 in addition to the rental fee, in addition to the rental fee for the boat, there's a $12 charge for fuel. So how much is that going to cost? So let's take a look at those 2 amounts together, 25 plus the $12 for the fuel. So added together, that's going to cost $37 for 1 hour of using the boat. Okay, what about 2 hours? Well, it's still $25 per hour. So 25 for the first hour, 25 for the second hour, and then that $12 fuel charge, so plus 12. So 25 and 25, that's 50, and another 12 there. That's going to be $62. 62 to rent that boat and put fuel in it for 2 hours. 3 hours. So we've got 25, 25, plus 25, rental fee for all 3 hours, plus the one-time fuel charge of 12. That's $75 plus that 12. It's going to cost $87 for 3 hours to rent that boat. Okay, so now that we have the table filled out, we have to determine if this is considered a proportional relationship. So what I did yesterday was take from the table and set up ratios here to see if they were equivalent to each other. So let's start with the 1 hour. It's $37 for 1 hour. Is that going to be proportional or equivalent to the $62 it is for 2 hours? And one last one here, is that going to be equivalent to the $87 it is for 3 hours? So here's where your calculator comes in handy again. Remember, you're going to divide these out and see if they're equivalent. Well, 37 over 1. That's still 37 over 1, or 37. If we take and divide out the 62 divided by 2, we're going to get, and you can check in your calculator here, you should be seeing if you divide those two out, it's $31 for 1 hour. Okay, 87 divided by 3. So if we divide that, we're going to see 29 over 1. So right here, when you're looking to see if those are equivalent to each other, obviously they are not. You don't have the $37 per one going all the way through. You don't have the same unit rate. You don't have the same pattern. So when you see this is considered a non-proportional relationship. And so you're just going to see me abbreviate here. Non-proportional. And it's because the ratios are not equivalent. We don't see that pattern going throughout that table. Non-proportional. All right, let's try number 2. So number 2 says, which situation represents a proportional relationship between the hours worked and the amount earned for Matt and Jane? So we have 2 different people here, Matt, and showing his hours that he worked and his earnings, and then Jane, the hours that she worked and her earnings. So let's check and see which one shows that proportional relationship. So for Matt's earnings, $12 he's making for 1 hour of work. We're going to see if that's equivalent to $20 for 2 hours of work. And then lastly, we're going to see if that's equivalent to $31 for 3 hours of work. So 12 over 1 is the same thing as 12, or 12 over 1 simplified. 20 over 2 simplified, that's the same as 10 over 1. And then 31 over 3, double check that on my calculator. If we divide that out, we're looking at 10.3, and it repeats as a decimal, over 1. So Matt's earnings is not proportional. We would assume when we look at this first column here that he's going to make $12 per hour. And if that was the case, we would see a pattern of $12 going through the rest of that table for every hour he worked. But it's not true. These are not equivalent to each other. So he has no pattern in the amount he's making per hour. And so Matt's earnings right here are considered non-proportional. Now let's take a look over at Jane's. So for her 1 hour of work, she's also making $12. If she works 2 hours, she's making $24. And if she works 3 hours, she's making $36. So now let's take a look and see if these are equivalent ratios here. Well, just like Matt's here, this 12 over 1, right? That still simplifies to 12, or 12 over 1, $12 per hour. Now simplify your next ratio, 24 over 2. Well, that also reduces down to 12 over 1. And then let's try this last one, 36 over 3. If you divide that out, you are also going to get $12 per 1 hour. So Jane's earnings, every hour she works, she is truly making $12 an hour. You see the unit rate, you see the pattern, or constant rate it's called, going through the table. And so Jane's earnings, I'm going to put above her table, are proportional. So when it's looking at which situation represents that proportional relationship between the amount of hours worked and the amount of money that's being earned, it is definitely Jane's earnings. She has that $12 per hour rate going through. Okay, so you're going to try a few. So I think between yesterday and today, both videos, we've done quite a few examples of tables that are considered proportional or not proportional. You've seen both. And I've gone through and I've shown work on how you determine if they are a proportional or non-proportional relationship. So we're going to go to the next page. And you're going to try on the independent practice here, the first three. So right here, number 1 and number 2. Now, part of those tables are already filled in for you. So you're going to fill in the remaining pieces based on the story for both 1 and 2. And then you're going to come down to number 3, where you have to determine, like we just did on the previous page, which of these two tables, Desmond or Maria, has that proportional relationship. So at this point, you're going to pause the video like we've done in the last week or so. After some examples, you pause and you're going to try some. Still be honest with yourself. Really, truly pause it. Go through those examples. Try the work. Go back and look at other examples if you need to, or go back in the video if you have to. But pause it and try it. And when you feel like you are ready to go and check your answers, then please do so. Now, when you finish these 3, and once you've checked your answers, you will see there's another bullet on the agenda item for today that you are going to get logged into BuzzMath. So make sure as soon as this is done, you take a look at the next step on the agenda so that you can get set up and ready to go with BuzzMath today. So go ahead and pause the video. Try these out. Okay, take a peek and see how you did for questions 1, 2, and 3 on the independent practice. So check your work. When you check your work, if you did make any mistakes, you definitely can go back and fix based on what you see on my screen. And if you still have questions about filling in the tables or your answers, or if something is proportional or non-proportional, please feel free to contact me or Mr. Terpstra or Mr. Whalen and ask. Otherwise, if you feel like you're okay and ready to go, like I said before, you're going to go to the next agenda item, which is BuzzMath. We will, in the next day, also review a little bit more of this, but also head into the next lesson. And so we will talk tomorrow.